The silent champion. Hey, you there cleaning. How about a quick demonstration? Derek Mitchell shouted from the center of the mat, his black belt gleaming under the gym's lights. I bet you've never seen a real fight in your life. James Washington, 42, had been working as a janitor at the gym for 3 weeks, always arriving after hours. But that Thursday night, the advanced class had run late. I don't want to bother you, James replied calmly, returning to his mopping. Derek laughed loudly. Everyone, look at this. The guy's afraid to even step on the mat. The 8 students laughed nervously, clearly uncomfortable. What Derek didn't know was that James had spent 20 years trying to forget who he really was. 20 years since he left the ring after an accident that changed his life forever. Come on, man, Derek continued, approaching with an arrogant smile. Just a little demonstration. Show my students the difference between someone who trains and someone who just cleans. James felt that familiar sensation in his chest, like a dormant muscle awakening. His eyes met Derek's briefly, and for a split second, something passed between them that made the instructor take an involuntary step back. All right, James said finally, his voice calm. But when we're done, you're going to apologize to all of them for turning the mat into a circus. Derek laughed. Apologize? You're going to be the one apologizing to the floor. What none of them knew was that James Washington had once been Silent Storm Washington, 5-time world mixed martial arts champion. He had retired at the height of his career after an accident that cost the life of his best friend and training partner, Tony Rodriguez. Since then, he had sworn never to fight again. As Derek circled him like a predator, making increasingly racist comments about appropriate places for certain types of people, a young Asian student named Sarah Chun spoke up. Sensei Derek, maybe we can continue our normal training, she said timidly. Sarah Chun, are you questioning my teaching methodology? Derek snapped. Sit down and watch. James recognized the look of fear in her eyes, the same look he had seen in mirrors 2 decades ago. So, janitor, Derek sneered. How about showing my students how to do a basic guard? That's when Derek made his first mistake. He pushed James lightly on the shoulder. James absorbed the push without moving an inch, his feet planted like oak roots. Derek felt as if he had tried to push a concrete wall. Sarah couldn't stay silent. Sensei Derek, can I ask why you think it's necessary to humiliate someone who is just doing his job? This has nothing to do with race, Derek replied forcefully. It has to do with respect for martial arts and knowing your place. James opened his eyes slowly and smiled. Not nervously, but with the calculated smile of someone who had just found a reason to stop hiding. Derek, James said, his voice carrying quiet authority. The young lady is right. This isn't about martial arts. It's about you trying to feel important by belittling others. Derek's face reddened. How dare you lecture me? You don't even know what a dojo is. James took a step forward, and something fundamental changed in his posture. His shoulders straightened, his center of gravity lowered imperceptibly, his feet positioned in perfect fighting stance. Actually, James said calmly, I know exactly what a dojo is. And I know this place stopped being one a long time ago. Sarah watched with growing fascination. Something about the way the janitor moved reminded her of the great masters she had studied in historical videos. Last chance to apologize, James offered. To her, to your students, and to turn this place back into a learning space. Derek laughed nervously, and attacked. His first punch was technically perfect, fast, accurate. It was the kind of punch that worked against 99% of people. James wasn't in that 99%. The movement was so fluid that half the room couldn't process it. James simply wasn't where Derek's fist had been aimed. His body slid to the side like water flowing around a rock. Nice try, James commented softly. Clean technique, but you telegraphed the move with your right shoulder. Derek attacked again. Jab, straight, hook. His favorite combination. Again, James simply wasn't there. Interesting combination, James observed, still breathing evenly. Works well against people who stand still, but you're leaving your left side completely exposed. Derek was sweating now. He couldn't land a single punch. Stop dancing and fight, Derek shouted, launching a desperate attack. That's when James decided the demonstration had gone on long enough. When Derek recovered from missing all his blows, James was inexplicably closer. "Derek," James said softly, "do you want to know the difference between someone who learned to fight in gyms and someone who learned in professional rings?" Without appearing to use any force, James simply touched Derek on the chest with his palm. Derek flew backwards nearly 2 meters and landed on his back with an impact that made everyone gasp. The silence was absolute. "That's impossible," Derek muttered, trying to get up. Sarah's voice trembled. "You don't understand who he is, do you?" She read from her phone. James Washington, also known as Silent Storm, 5-time world mixed martial arts champion, considered one of the best technical fighters in history, retired undefeated after a 22-year career. Derek's face went pale. 5-time world champion. James nodded. "I retired at 29. Since then, I've been working simple jobs. No spotlight, no cameras, no need to prove anything to anyone." "I didn't know," Derek whispered. If you had known, would you have treated me with respect?" James interrupted gently. "But would you still have humiliated some other janitor? Another worker with no credentials to defend himself?" The question cut deeper than any physical blow. "Sensei Derek," Sarah said firmly, "what I witnessed today was not teaching. It was bullying disguised as instruction." "I sincerely apologize," Derek said finally, his voice laden with unprecedented humility. "I have no excuse. Apologies are only the first step," James replied. "The question is, what are you going to do differently from now on?" Sarah asked. "Mr. Washington, would you consider teaching again? I think we could all learn a lot from someone who understands that true strength comes with responsibility." James smiled genuinely. "Maybe, but not to teach fighting techniques, to teach something much more important, that respect isn't earned with belts or titles, but with character." 3 months later, the gym had been completely transformed. James was hired as an instructor specializing in advanced techniques and martial arts philosophy. Derek lost half his students when Sarah's video spread across social media. "Sensei James," Sarah said after class, "thank you for teaching me that true strength doesn't need to be displayed to be recognized." James smiled. "The best lesson I can teach is simple. Never judge someone by their profession or appearance. Everyone carries stories that can surprise us." Derek continued teaching at a smaller gym, now with a humility forced by public shame. He had learned that arrogance comes at a price. Sometimes justice comes quietly, like a storm that transforms everything without making a sound. James proved that true revenge is not destroying your opponent, but showing that greatness comes from character, not titles. Sometimes justice comes quietly, like a storm that transforms everything without making a sound. It doesn't announce itself with anger or demand applause. It arrives with patience, restraint, and unshakable resolve. James understood this long before anyone else did. While others mistook power for volume and authority for dominance, he chose a different path. Discipline over ego, dignity over reaction. He never raised his voice to prove his strength. He never needed to humiliate those who doubted him. Instead, he let his actions speak in moments when it mattered most. Each calm decision, each measured step forward, became a mirror, forcing others to confront the emptiness behind their titles and the fragility of their pride. James proved that true revenge is not destroying your opponent, but outgrowing them. It is standing tall when you were expected to break, remaining gracious when provoked, and succeeding without bitterness. In the end, his victory wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was undeniable. Because greatness, he showed, is not granted by rank, uniform, or status. It is earned through character, integrity, and the quiet courage to stay true to who you are, even when the world is watching. Because greatness, he showed, is not granted by rank, uniform, or status. It is earned through character, integrity, and the quiet courage to stay true to who you are, even when the world is watching. It is built in the unseen moments, when no one is applauding and no reward is guaranteed. It grows in the choices made under pressure, when taking the easy path would be simpler, but the right path demands strength. James carried himself with humility, knowing that real power doesn't need to dominate or belittle others to exist. While titles can be given and uniforms can be worn, character is forged through sacrifice, self-control, and an unwavering sense of right and wrong. Integrity, he believed, was the ability to stand by your values even when doing so costs you comfort, recognition, or approval. In staying true to himself, James became something far more powerful than what others expected. He became an example, not the kind written on plaques or shouted from podiums, but the kind that lingers quietly in the minds of those who witnessed his restraint, his resolve, and his grace. And long after the noise fades and the titles lose their shine, it is that kind of greatness, the kind rooted in character, that endures.